Welcome to The Stories, Exploring the Creative Mind. This is the podcast where we invite conversations, share unique perspectives, and heartfelt stories about what it means to be creative. I'm your host, Chrissy, owner of Kite Jewels, a social and eco-conscious jewelry brand that aims to bring modern and versatile pieces to elevate your everyday style. Just to give you some background, I started my blog, The Stories, as a way to connect with my audience, and as a small business owner, I felt like I needed to add more to my plate. All jokes aside, I've always been drawn to people's stories, especially when it comes to their journey into their creative work, because our creativity is a reflection of our truest selves and comes from the heart. In this inaugural podcast, I'll be talking to Emily Machan, who is a Calgary-based creative portraits photographer. We have an in-depth conversation about everything, including her journey into photography, what inspires her, all the techie stuff like the gear and software someone might need to get started in photography, and even tips on how we can take better selfies. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Emily Machan. Today I'm here with Emily Machan, who is a creative portraits photographer based in Calgary, and Emily and I have worked on a few shoots together already, and needless to say, I am a huge fan, if you can't already tell. I feel like your photographs, when I look at them, there's an emotion, there's a depth, and the way that you capture your subject, the light, the composition, of course it's creative, it feels artful, it feels thought out and considered, and I just love that. And I've seen you work, and I feel like it almost comes naturally to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like an intuitive thing for you. And I don't think that comes naturally to most people or photographers. So I'm hoping through our conversation today, we'll learn more about you, your work, your creative process, and maybe even some tips on how to take better portraits. And even if we're just taking like a selfie on our cameras, just some tips on improving those. So let's get right into the questions. First of all, when did you start photography and how did you get into all of this?
So when I was really young, actually I'll start off by saying growing up, my entire family has been extremely creative. My dad wanted to be an architect. My mom has always loved painting and drawing. My sister is a graphic designer and my brother is an animator. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, the arts were always encouraged. Mm-hmm. But what really made me fall in love with photography was when I was in the 7th grade. My dad thought it would be fun for me and my sisters and me and my friends to create music videos.
Okay.
It's a little embarrassing, but we created a music video, I don't know if you know it, to the song I Must Not Chase the Boys by Play.
Okay.
Yeah. 7th grade.
Yes. Yes.
But from there, I really fell in love with the idea of being able to tell a story through a camera. And at the same time as all that, I was growing up, I was experiencing new things, and I needed an outlet. Mm-hmm. I love drawing and everything like that, but I love the idea that with a camera, you could create a story in an instant and still have it be super beautiful and very artistic. And so that's when it all kind of started. Looking back on those photos, they're not the best,
right?
But they're fun still.
Yeah.
I would copy like magazines and everything like that. Yeah,
we've all got to start somewhere.
We all got to start somewhere. Yeah. And then so in high school is when I really started to take it seriously. Mm-hmm. I did IB art, and so at the end of the year of your senior year, you have to do an exhibition. Mm-hmm. And so mine was all photographs. Mm-hmm. And so my high school art teacher was amazing. Mm-hmm. She really pushed me to figure out why I wanted to take photos, and really helped me understand the process of the intention behind the photo. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how it all really started.
Right. Yeah, and when you say intention, I feel like that really shines through your photography. Since that time in high school, obviously you've developed more of a style. Would you say that you have a particular style of photography or taking photos, or do you feel like it's always evolving?
I feel like it's always evolving. But when I ask other people, they say there is a style. I think what has remained consistent throughout all my photos, as I've said before, is my intention behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I always want it to show basically a story and emotions.
Right.
I've always been terrible with words.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to use my photographs to describe things and feelings that you can't necessarily explain.
Right.
Or you have to be like a true poet
Yes.
to be able to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my photos are, they can be quite dreamy.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when they have that nostalgic feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they can be quite moody as well.
Right.
Like dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at your photos, I do feel like I would agree with the way that you describe your style. And like, for example, if I was to compare your pictures to somebody else, I would be able to pick it out. I'd be like, yeah, that looks like Emily's style,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so do you feel like to be a photographer in this, I'm not to say that you have to be a professional photographer, but to be a photographer, do you need to develop a style? Like, do you feel like photographers are, necessarily pigeonholed into a certain way of taking photographs, or?
That's a good question.
Sorry, it's not on the list.
Oh, that's okay. Yes and no. I don't consider myself a professional photographer. I think when you're first starting out and trying to figure out what you like, I don't think it's good to just stick to one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to try a lot of new things out. But if you do want to make it in the professional world, you do have to have a style that will make you stand out from others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just from advice that I've gotten from working professionals
Mm-hmm.
in like the fashion industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all depends on where you want to take your photography career.
Right.
For me right now, I'm definitely fine with having different styles because I feel like I'm still learning all the time.
Yeah.
But probably in a year or a couple of years, I'm going to want to establish who I am as a photographer.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and like speaking about styles and whatnot, we sort of spoke about how film is like super popular now. It seems like it's like a trend. Even people taking photographs or pics on their phones, they're trying to apply that, film filter. And like, how do you feel about like these trends that just keep moving? Like, I remember 5-6 years ago, everybody's Instagram feeds were all like bright, white, overexposed. And now we're more into sort of like that film, darker, more vivid colors. Like, what's your take on trends? Like, I guess that sort of ties into what you were saying about like, your style, right?
Yeah, as I was saying before, I think it's a good and bad thing. Like when I first started posting on Instagram, not with the account I have now.
Yeah.
I had an old account
back
in high school with the name, like, it was so silly, Blue Wave Ocean.
Okay.
It had no meaning to it.
Love it.
Yeah. And so the trend then was like heavy Photoshop use, creating very like surreal images.
Right.
I think trends are good. They're a trend for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're really popular, and at the time, majority of people like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think trends are good because it does teach you new techniques that you wouldn't have thought of, or it teaches you a different way to do something that you might end up loving but not use completely.
Right.
But also they can be a bad thing because, as you said before, it can pigeonhole photographers into a certain style.
Right. Yeah, like when I think about some of the more classic established photographers, portrait photographers like Annie Leibovitz, for example, like you look at her photos and they're just like, you would say that they were timeless.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just like a certain style. And so, like, is there a way for people who are just casually taking photographs, like, not to get stuck in these trends? Like, would you just say, like, do what feels good, try other things?
Yeah, I definitely think do what feels right to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's a trend that you absolutely love and you're like, this is who I am, then to you the photos will feel timeless.
Right.
Because that's who you are.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think it all depends on what you personally like. I don't think there ever is like a terrible photo per se.
Okay.
You know, like, I think it's very subjective as well.
Yeah, right. Okay, so like I said earlier, I feel like when you work, it almost seems intuitive and natural in the way that you shoot, but there must be some sort of like creative process for you even before you pick up the camera, because I think we've spoken about how, you know, even when I go to shoot my own jewelry, for example, I kind of have this idea in my mind about how I want it to look.
Yeah.
And so could you describe like what your process is before you even take a photograph, or like what it is
for
during?
Sure. Whenever I think of like doing a shoot, it always starts with a feeling. Like, I like to envision the photographs in my mind beforehand, how it might look. And then usually what I send to the person I'm working with is reference images that I find best suits what I'm picturing in my head. Sometimes I like to draw it out, but usually I just look towards reference images online that match what I'm feeling inside and envisioning in my head. And then I also get insanely inspired by music videos. And so usually when I am envisioning these things in my head it feels like it's a music video. But it probably isn't.
Right. And that's it's so funny you say that, because sometimes when I'm looking for a caption for my Instagram, and this sounds super cheesy because I know a lot of people do this, they use lyrics from a song, but like it makes you feel something.
It does make you feel something.
Like I feel like music is like so tied to like how you feel.
Definitely.
And so when you talk about that, like that really speaks to me. It makes so much sense.
Because sometimes when I'm watching a music video, there's like that, I guess, energy or something that the music moves you, and it's that movement I want to try to capture in my photos, or try to convey through it. So
So during your process, is there something that you consider like your biggest obstacle? It's like something that you're constantly working on?
Well, I guess there's two things. One of them is something I'll probably be always working on, is bringing the vision to life. Because, you know, sometimes you envision it in your head and it doesn't necessarily work out.
Like logistically. Just like the pieces don't all come together.
And it's just like, that can cause some frustration. I'm really working with the flow and adapting to situations. Like, especially this year, I'm really trying to not control it and just kind of letting things go with the flow and seeing where that takes us. And so far, the results are amazing. Yes. Like my shoot with Michaela. That one we just winged it.
Really? Okay.
Like we started off with a basic idea. And throughout it, both of us were like, oh, what if we do this? What if we do that? Like, and it just worked out perfectly.
This is the Lunar New Year photo shoot, which I was sending a message to Michaela and I was like, you look like a goddess. And she's like, literally, we were trying to, like, I was trying to be a goddess. I'm like, perfect. Like, so perfect.
And I think that's also one of the best feelings too, is when you don't know where you're going with it, and you're working collaboratively with the other person, and it just creates like magic.
Right. And I feel like it's so interesting too, like when you have a certain idea, but to bring other people into the mix. I don't know if you are this way, but sometimes I'm afraid to let people into my process because I'm like, I know what I want, but are these people gonna like help me in that, or are they just gonna make it harder for me, right?
Exactly. And I guess that's kind of similar to the second thing, like the second of my challenges is, I guess, being confident in voicing how I want something to be.
Right.
Because sometimes, like, the way that you view it in real life versus how you view it through the camera, it looks so weird, like in real life. But on camera, it looks like insane. You know, like in a good way. Insane in a good way. And so that's like another challenge where I have, especially if I haven't met this person before and I want to try to do something, but I'm not confident enough to try to explain it.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, like, obviously you work with people and you're photographing people. Do you find that that's a challenge too? Like, do you necessarily need a good model to produce a good photograph? Like,
I think
What's
that
your
depends
experience
on the shoot.
Yeah.
Like when I started out with photography, no one that I shot with was a professional model.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so if you're trying to create a certain type of image that's like, let's say, just artistic, I don't think you need a professional model. However, if you are shooting for a brand, like a clothing brand or a jewelry brand, I will say you do need a professional model, just because they have had practice and they understand exactly. Yeah. They know how to show off the product.
Right.
Because the shoot really isn't about them anymore. It's about the brand that you're photographing.
Right.
But when you're shooting maybe like just like a regular portrait, then it's about the person.
Yes. Yeah.
And I say it's all about like your ability to be confident in front of the camera and not being afraid to look stupid.
Right.
Because there will be photos where you're like mid-blank or it's an awkward angle, and you have to, not be afraid that those are gonna happen.
Right. Okay. And then just like in terms of like equipment, like let's say somebody's like starting out and wanting to take just like casual photographs. Do you think equipment is like super necessary to produce like really good results, or can somebody just start with like a phone camera and then kind of work themselves up to like
I definitely think you can start with a phone, especially with today's phones.
Yeah.
And also right now, as we were talking about trends before, the trend is like old 2000s, 2010 cameras. And so you can definitely start out with those. Yeah. And people are going to love it.
Right.
I think once you want to start to take it more seriously, having good gear, like really basic good gear, is a must.
Yeah. So what would you consider like as your basic must-haves?
A DSLR. One that like where you can change the lenses.
Okay.
Because I don't think it matters that much about the body. Okay. I mean, me personally, I'm terrible at like technical terms.
Yeah.
When it comes to cameras, like people ask me about my camera and I still have to look at my camera to know what type of camera it is. But I definitely think lenses can change everything about a photo.
Okay, so like the type of lens that you're using. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I recently got a fisheye lens. Well, it wasn't recent. It was like a year ago. It feels recently. Right. And that just changes everything. Yes. And also taught me to shoot in like different frame rate as well. Or f-stop, sorry. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so.
Right. Okay, so we got DSLR that's able to change lenses. What about like lighting setup? Like if you're outside, you're probably good, right? You've got natural light, but like indoor photography is like, do you think light setups are necessary?
No. I don't think they're that necessary. It depends. Like with my studio, it's a lot easier with a light setup. But let's say you're just shooting in like your living room or your bedroom, you can get really creative with the lighting that you already have there, like lamps and I guess overhead lighting too. But usually overhead lighting isn't the greatest. Yeah. Yeah, it's just all about being creative and being able to adapt to your situation. Because there's so many talented people out there who are able to use what they have around them.
Yeah. I guess like the final piece would be like editing. So how important is like the editing side of it to photography? Like me as, just like a casual photo taker, if that's the word. I have like a few pieces of software that I use for my work, editing my jewelry photos. But like if I was to look at a professional's photograph, I know that they've done some editing, but I'm not sure what the extent is. And I guess that's part of the skill as well. But like, can you speak to the editing piece of it?
I personally think editing is pretty important. I use it for all my photos. I don't think I've ever posted a photo unedited. Right. And I don't send unedited photos to people either. It's like a classic argument between a client and a photographer. Yeah. Editing can change everything about a photo. And it's not just like skin editing. I don't do it that much with skin editing. It's more so about like the color grading to me is what makes quite a difference.
Yeah.
And so I personally love editing.
Right. Yeah, because like you have this vision and you know, color grading is so important. You can get it to that, you know, level where it's kind of like showing what you wanted.
And sometimes you don't have the right light equipment either. And so you need to use the editing in order to make it the image that you want.
Yeah. So is there like a software that is like your go-to?
Lightroom.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you find it's easy for beginners to use?
Yeah.
And there's,
Yeah, I mean, I had no training when it came to photography, and so a lot of it was trial and error for me. And so Lightroom, I used to use Photoshop primarily.
Okay. Yeah.
And then my art teacher was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was like, "Use Lightroom, try it out."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, if I must."
Yeah.
And then, like, game changer.
Yeah. Do you feel like Lightroom is more convenient as a photographer? It just kind of like puts all the things that you would need to edit? I know it's getting more technical now, but
that's okay.
because I've used Photoshop and it just seems like more cumbersome, like the way that you go into the different settings and like, you know, editing just seems harder in Photoshop.
The way I view it is kind of like Lightroom is the coloring, the lighting, really being able to change, I guess, the surface of the image, whereas Photoshop, it's manipulation in a good way.
Yeah,
it's photo manipulation. You know, you can do amazing things on Photoshop.
Right.
There is also, you know, like the color editing and the exposure and everything like that. But if that's all you're gonna do, just the coloring and the exposure, then I would say go to Lightroom because that's what it's suited for.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So if you're making like a crazy photograph where, I don't know, there's people and then like a random like animal, like a dolphin, you're superimposing things, maybe Photoshop is the way to go?
I use Photoshop as well sometimes because sometimes it can do really specific tasks that Lightroom cannot.
Right, okay. But just like super basic, if you just want to edit your light, color, Lightroom.
Exactly. And there's also, I'm pretty sure there is a free Lightroom for your phone.
So in your experience, what would be like the top tip that you would tell somebody if they wanted to improve their portrait photography? Like you can, I don't know where you want to start, but you can go from like just your camera phone all the way up to your DSLR.
My top tip would be practice.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Shoot, photograph anyone, you know, grab a friend, you know, start styling photo shoots. I mean, it depends on the photography that you want to do. But if you're doing portraits and you want to start getting into that, I would say just practice. That's all. That's really my number one thing.
Like different angles,
different locations, different lighting settings. If you're used to shooting in broad daylight, try shooting in the dark and shooting with a higher ISO. You know, that will really just push you creatively. And yeah, that's what got me to having all this.
Right.
Is practice, you know. I took a huge break from photography when I first started university.
Yeah.
I was so bad at it when I started again, and then just constantly shooting and meeting new people is what got me back. Yeah.
And then what about like camera phones? Is there a tip that you would give somebody? Like, let's say they're just like taking a selfie or just like just taking a picture with a group of friends. Like, do you have any tips for that?
I think lighting is a huge thing. A tip I learned from another photographer is if you're like outside, I'm sure a lot of people also know this tip, but when you're outside, you use the palm of your hand.
Okay.
And so you can like turn it and turn with yourself. And because of like the curves in your hands, you can see where the shadows are going to be.
Oh, okay.
And so basically you want to like turn it where there's no shadows.
On your hand.
On your, like on here.
On here, okay.
And that's when you can find your best lighting.
So then the light would be behind you is sort of like
the idea? Like this is the front of your face.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you would go like this.
Like you can just like turn your body like that and see where is like the best lighting. So if you turn it this way.
Yeah.
And you can see the lighting right now, the best, most direct lighting for your face.
So the face this way
like
would
that.
Be like perfect.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
For the phone.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
For like a selfie.
Yeah, and are there like certain angles that you suggest for a selfie? Like let's say, you know, you're like holding out your phone, should it be up here? Because I've heard tips where people are like, hold it up here, it just makes you look better, like younger.
I think it depends on what you like, because I know there's some people who love it from down below.
Yeah.
The trend is doing like the 0.5 zoom and like all the way up high.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I personally like my photos, I don't take selfies often, but they're usually like a bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have my phone here, like a bit lower, and
Right.
I don't actually know what I do now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I would say just like from here.
Right.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
But I don't take selfies
I do
often.
notice that if you hold it down here, it eliminates the bags under your eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do like it a little lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having good, just natural lighting
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to go.
Right. And then I've noticed too that you can get like, you know, the little ring lights for your phone, which I recently got.
Nice. Me too.
Yeah, and those make a huge difference as well.
They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it creates a more even lighting around your face.
Yeah.
And can create that really cool, like, glow circle, like, in your eye.
Ah, okay. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Good tip. So where do you draw your inspiration from? Like, do you have any people that you look up to or social media accounts that you like to look at?
As I said before, I love music videos.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time, I was inspired by the artist Troye Sivan.
Yes.
And his music videos. I remember, like, back in 2017, I think.
Yeah.
He created the series, like, Blue Neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, blew my mind.
Right.
When I was younger, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, Instagram photographers that I love, there's this one photographer, her name's, like, Kitty Lou on Instagram, and she creates, like, these beautiful purple huey type of photos that are just so dreamy and so lovely. Another photographer that I love is Alexsey Reyes.
Okay.
I can give you the Instagram.
Yes.
afterwards.
Yeah, we'll put little
Yes.
names here.
I love his creativity. He creates amazing studio work. He uses photo manipulation to just make them epic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more photographers too.
Right, but those are your, like, top two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of my current faves, because right now also getting back into photo manipulation is becoming another trend in the photography world that I'm noticing, especially for,
like overt manipulation, where it's like you look at a photo and it's like...
Yeah, so, but it's also not just like Photoshop, it's actually printing the photos out, collaging them, ripping them up, using physical media on top of the photo, re-photographing that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Right.
I love it, personally.
Yeah.
I need to start doing more of it.
Yeah. No, I definitely did not know about this trend, so sounds really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. There's this one photographer, her name is, her Instagram name is Digital Megs, and she does amazing digital renderings on top of her photographs. Like, it's incredible. Like, she'll create like a digital sticker on top of her photo.
Oh, okay.
And it looks realistic.
Right.
But it's not. She like created it.
Cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely check out these accounts.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you say Instagram is like your go-to for photography, like in terms of social media?
Yeah, I used to use Pinterest a lot more, but lately I found it just doesn't show me, maybe I'm not using the right keywords, but it just doesn't show me the style that I'm looking for anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's very, I mean, I'm probably just not using it enough.
Right.
So I do use Instagram a lot because I save a lot of photos on there. And then I also use Visco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I know nothing of Visco. I'm like, I feel like I'm too old.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just started posting on Visco.
Describe Visco to us elder millennials. What is it, Visco?
Well, I think Visco used to be really popular back in like...
Okay, maybe I was just not cool enough to use it, but...
I don't know. I love posting on Visco. There's no pressure.
Okay, so describe it. Is it like a feed?
Yeah,
and
so
your friends are looking at it?
You can't have your friends looking at it.
Okay, but it's like a public
It's a public
space.
thing.
Okay.
You can edit photos on there. I usually edit like my iPhone photos on there.
And there's no pressure.
There's no pressure. There's
in
no
terms
numbers.
of like. Okay, so there's no like count or.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can repost photos. You can favorite photos. You can follow people on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an amazing feeling when Visco reposts your photo.
Okay.
Like, I'm like, oh my god, Visco, and then
Right.
you'll get like tons of other people seeing your work, but you don't know how many.
Oh,
You just
okay.
see their names.
Oh, okay.
And like, you can only post one photo. You can add a caption, but like, I don't. I just write the hashtag Visco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
Okay. I
Yeah.
might have to check that out too.
Yeah, you should. I feel like it's like more. I mean, I might be wrong in how other people feel about it, but I personally feel like it's more genuine, artistic,
Mm-hmm.
like photos.
So it doesn't cater towards.
It
like,
doesn't
the
cater
trends and
towards the
filters
trends.
and,
Yeah,
like,
people
stuff
are
like
just
that.
posting what they want to post.
Right. Okay.
There's like beautiful photos on there. There's just regular iPhone photos on there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people post like screenshots of like artsy messages that they've gotten like through text. Like, you know, when people like screenshot their text messages from people?
Yeah. Yeah.
They do that too on there.
Okay. Cool.
It's just like a whole mess of things.
Nice. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions, and I'm going to challenge you to answer with either one word,
Okay.
maybe 2 words, or maybe just a really short sentence. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is one thing in your camera kit, excluding your camera body,
Okay.
that you can't live without?
Okay. Excluding my 24 to 70 millimeter lens.
Okay, and that is for taking portraits?
Yes.
Is it like a
Everything.
all-rounder
I think
type
it's
of
everything.
lens? Okay. Everybody remember that. What is one photography trick you think everyone should know, regardless of the equipment that they have?
Shooting backlight. Shooting light.
From behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What would you prefer? Okay, so there's 2 scenarios. Which one would you prefer? Okay, first scenario is you have the best gear possible, but you have terrible lighting and there's no way you can improvise. Or would you rather have the best lighting, but like terrible gear, and again, you can't improvise with other things?
I think best lighting. Terrible gear.
Okay. Which famous person, dead or alive, would you want to photograph? A famous person.
Oh my gosh. That's such a tough one.
It is hard. I agree.
Can we skip this one and come back to it?
Okay. Okay. Do photographers secretly judge people's work? Everybody else's photos?
Yes.
Okay. I think I could have guessed that answer. Okay, so I guess related to that, can photographers tell immediately if something is edited?
I think so.
Mm-hmm. It's like there's no way this picture can be like the perfect lighting, color grading, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is your go-to posing tip for somebody? Let's say you're working with somebody who's like not really a professional model, but kind of like, you know, just casually modeling for you. Like, what's your go-to pose?
There's no go-to pose, but it's just movement.
Okay, so like,
Yeah, because you're going to be nervous.
right.
And so just make them move anyways.
Or like a little walk,
Yeah.
or like.
Swaying side to side.
Okay. What is one surprising thing about photography, bad or good? Since you've started, what's one thing that has surprised you?
I guess how easy it can be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to the famous person, have you thought of a famous person, either a celebrity or a well-known person, dead or alive, that you would just absolutely love to shoot, to take a photo of?
Okay, I'm just going to go with Troye Sivan.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna at him.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
At him. We don't have to. Okay, I want to thank you so much for this interview. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me and everybody else about your creative process and what it's been like for you on your photography journey. And where can people find your work? Is it just your Instagram?
I have my Instagram. It's emailing. That's what I call it.
Okay, we'll put it over here.
Emailing. I also have my website, which is emilymachanphotography.com.
Okay, cool. Check her out, everybody. I love Emily and her work, so I'd love for you guys to check her out as well. All right.
Thank you.
And that concludes the very first episode of The Stories, Exploring the Creative Mind. I hope you enjoyed listening to Emily speak about her creative journey and experiences. I know I will definitely be using the palm trick to check which way to aim the camera the next time I pick up my phone to take pictures or videos. If you missed anything, check out the blog post on kitejewels.com/blogs/thestories. And if you enjoyed listening, please consider following this podcast and sharing it with a friend. My name is Chrissy, and you can find me over at Kite Jewels on Instagram and my jewelry on kitejewels.com, where you can find all the jewels you need to elevate your everyday. Thank you for listening.